Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar on what's happening. We have the team talking about how to manage events, increase engagement, and support student success. I know it's a crazy time of year, so appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to join us for today's session. I just have a couple of reminders as we get started. So we are recording the session today, and we'll share that recording with you following the session. And then we do have the Q&A box open. So feel free to submit questions to our presenters using the Q&A box. And we do also have chat enabled for today's session. So you can certainly use chat to share ideas from your institution as well. And with that, I just want to introduce today's presenters. We have Dr. MK Tyler joining us, who's a solutions consultant from our team. And MK, why don't I turn it over to you to introduce yourself and then to Elijah after that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mirko. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. MK Tyler. I'm a solutions consultant here with Ready Education. Looking forward to talking to you today about this really important topic. And with it being such an important time on campus, I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing to welcome your students back to campus. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know some of y'all today during the session. So I'll pop it over to Eli as well.
Hi, my name is Elijah Bader Gregory. I'm a senior at the University of Rochester, and I am on Ready Education Student Advisory Council. On the U of R campus, I've been pretty involved, and because of that, I use campus groups and lots of other Ready Education software for a ton of different things that I do. I previously served as the student body president at my institution, as well as currently being a resident advisor on the e-board of a couple different organizations, and also working on staff at my student union. So it's a little bit about me, and really excited to share more about my experiences and answer any questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that introduction, Elijah. And we're very excited to have him with us today. Like you said, he's an RA. It's orientation week. So I'm really looking forward to learning from him as well. So I want to go over a little bit about what we're going to cover today. I think after introductions, it's nice to know what we're going to talk about and where we're going. So today we're going to do what we currently know. So we've been doing some surveys. We've been talking to our clients about these different trends that we're seeing in higher education. We're also going to talk about some examples of our top institutions and how they're using our tools to combat those changes, and then talk about some best practices on process mapping to make sure things are as streamlined as they can be. And we're going to chat through how Ready Education is helping our clients make this all happen. We're also going to add some time at the end for Q&A as well, but if you have any questions throughout, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll look at that kind of as we go. So I want to get started with Ready Education's mission. If you're unfamiliar, our mission is to be the platform that students use every single day to be successful. And we do that by our tools empowering institutions to engage their campus community, improve communication and experiences, and ultimately drive student success and retention. And so I want to start with some of those common challenges that we've been hearing from our campus partners. And the first is that, building a sense of community and belonging across institutions, supporting different retention efforts. What I've seen, and I worked on campus for 10 years before coming to Ready Education, is that we were seeing that after COVID and even before, students were buried in their phones, and it was really hard to start building that community and that belonging, as well as navigating and managing too many disparate and disconnected systems. Sometimes you don't know what really great things people are doing on the other side of campus, and maybe because you don't have a centralized calendar, or you don't have really those champions in each office to go and talk and say, hey, this is what we're doing, or those processes have really just been siloed for a long time, and it's hard to break them down. The next is complex processes that are inefficient. All the days a student saying, okay, you need to come get a form from this office and go to that office, or trying to figure out how to book a room or food and what that looks like, as well as integrating with existing systems that consolidate the institution's tech stack. With budgets always on the top of the mind, it's how can you do more with less? And a lot of times that first thing that you're going to look at is that technology and those systems you currently have to do the things and get the data that you need. Another thing that we've heard is a common challenge is the inability to track student engagement. Where are they? What are they doing? kind of holistically, you can look and say, we can see that a lot of students are involved, they're coming to events, but what students aren't coming to events, what students aren't engaged? That's a little bit harder to figure out. As well as gaining visibility of institution-wide student data. What can that data tell you, but who has that data, where does it go, and where does it live? Or not having enough time to focus on students. You get caught up in these day-to-day tasks and student affairs of saying, okay, I have to do this, and then I have to do this paperwork, and then I have to call this person and go to this meeting or be on this task force. But you're not really having time to do why a lot of us got into that work, which is to focus on the students, to talk to them, and really help them develop holistically. And then finally, reaching students and keeping them informed. How do they want to be contacted? They're saying they're getting too many emails, but they don't want text messages. They want information, but how do they get it? So trying to figure out, how do you keep that informed? So those are really the common challenges we're seeing, and we're trying to find the questions about how do we answer some of these common challenges? And that brings me into our next slide of what we're going to cover. And the first is that what we know right now is involvement is critical to student success. Students persist and succeed when they're connecting. There's several theorists that say the more involved you are, the higher persistence rate you'll have because you feel connected to that institution. We also know how important data is in our world today. There's key decisions being made after seeing data, and it helps with planning, budgeting, and ultimately forecasting for future success. But then on the flip side of that, one thing that I don't think I have to say out loud, but I think it's on the forefront of everyone's mind, is that burnout is real, especially in August. You probably have just done move-in, or it's happening this week or next, and it's going into orientation, and then you just kind of have all of those big events throughout the fall. We know from NASPA's recent Compass report that 61% of people in student affairs are planning on continuing their work, but only 57% of those professionals would encourage someone else to enter the field. So really starting to think, why is that? Why is the demand of the work that's tiring and burning out keeping folks away? And then how can we maybe use technology to start to engage with some of those processes and the demand of the work to maybe lighten that load a little bit? And then our goal, and we assume that it's your goal too, is to create seamless access to resources, engagement opportunities, and a frictionless student experience. And what we found is that technology can be at the forefront to help us do that, to create a one-stop spot and put it directly in the hands of our students. So these are the elements we know that are impacting student engagement and belonging, but I would love to hear from our participants in the chat of what's happening here. And then Elijah, I'd also love to hear from you. What do you think some of the factors that you've seen impacting your peers' involvement while your time at Rochester?
Yeah, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head when it comes to like technology being really, really important. I think especially for like my generation of students. So I've been in college since 2022, and pretty much my entire engagement experience has been using technology or different technology services that we have as an institution. And some of the big things that I see that positively impact how we have involvement, I feel really lucky at Rochester. I know we just got our new statistic that we used campus groups to help generate. 95% of our undergrads are involved heavily in at least one on-campus organization, which is really, really big for us because, we like to have everyone be doing not just their academics, but, have a good holistic college experience. I think consistently targeting students and making sure that students are, able to attend events and activities that are low commitment, but also sort of repeated, and being able to do both larger campus things, but also sort of target how people can join different organizations and repeatedly go to things helps us get that really good retention and students feeling they have like a stake in their community on campus. And I also think another thing that we really, really benefit from and sort of know how engagement and belonging is being impacted is just the way that we connect certain services across different areas. So we have university student life uses campus groups as a tool to connect both student affairs and residential life and vice versa, and we connect dining events that go through student affairs and and really try and use all non-academic facets of things, for that engagement. We try and connect through one tool so that students aren't getting too many emails and they're not getting sort of overloaded with information, but they're getting targeted information that they need to make sure that they're going to key events, to interact with people, to make sure that no one's sort of slipping through the cracks and that people are always, getting the information that they need to feel like there's an opportunity to be engaged with too.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Elijah. And it's really nice just hearing that student perspective. So some of the things I heard is that your students and your peers really like those consistent events. They like knowing when they can show up to things and being able to have that one kind of one-stop place to be able to go and look for that information. But thank you for really giving us a good comprehensive overview of how you're using campus groups. And I'm looking forward as we go through the data in our presentation to really dive into a little bit more detail with some of those examples. So as a reminder, if you would like to engage with this conversation, and we do have the chat on for this webinar today. So if you want to talk about maybe some things that are impacting student engagement or belonging at your institution, feel free to throw it in your chat. I think we love to do these webinars with you here at Ready Education, but it's really fun to watch you all learn from each other as well. And we can also learn from your experiences. So if you have anything you'd like to share, feel free to throw it in the chat throughout this time as well. So the first thing we want to talk about is building community. That's a big one. It's how students are feeling connected on campus. And we discovered that 1 in 5 students are struggling with feeling connected at their institution, whether that feels like they're, not part of the community or being able to easily connect with their classmates outside of the classroom to study or get help. And so my question right now to use in the chat is, what are some strategies you have found effective for engaging students who are historically less involved? So again, that question is, what are some strategies you found being effective for engaging with students who are historically less involved? Great. So as you're thinking about that, we'll start to look at the second statistic, which is 22% of students find it difficult to contact and connect with their classmates outside of class for studying or for getting help. And I find that, it always makes me take a pause because I'm wondering, why is that? How can they, and how can we start to break down those walls? And then Elijah, I would love to hear from you is what is one thing that your institution has done well to engage with your students, and why do you think that worked?
Yeah, I think sort of bouncing off of some of these statistics, the stats that we're seeing now, like seeing that, around 20% of people don't feel like they're a part of their community. It's hard to, take someone who's so far on one spectrum of involvement and say, all right, well, you're going to go to 2 weekly club meetings and become an e-board member and do all these things. But what we try and do, I think, is try and again slowly get people to become more involved, and that takes the work of like larger campus events and then targeting those to everybody. So using campus groups and using email lists, we've been able to see some of our larger activities fairs and campus sort of tradition weekends and larger things that we can get more students to, and that allows them to sort of feel more like a member of the community and feel like they're invited to do that because everyone is. And then slowly, again, hopefully that helps breed some of the more natural, entanglement with the rest of the campus community. But we do something really cool every Thursday to sort of boost engagement with all students. Is every undergraduate student and certain grad programs who use campus groups, we all get an email every Thursday. It's like Thursday, we lit us at 5. If it's 5:30 and it hasn't gone out, student activities is getting emails from people. Where's this email? Where's it happening? We call the weekend highlights, and it's every event from Thursday through Sunday that's open to all students. So it could be open practice, could be a concert, it could be a fundraiser that's going on. Really anything that's going on, you've got a comprehensive list of things happening, and it allows for you to help plan out your weekend. And you don't ever want to have a weekend where someone feels like they're just sitting alone in their dorm room with nothing to do, because there's always things, we know that there's things happening on campus every single day across every single college, but it's hard to figure that out. And doing this, we just pull and aggregate all of the open events from campus groups and send it out in one really digestible way. And I find that really, really helps get people out to things that they otherwise wouldn't know about.
Awesome. Thank you. I really love hearing about your experiences. I want to, Elijah, if you want to keep your camera on, I know that, our second statistic is where, 22% of the students that we surveyed are saying that it's difficult to connect with their peers. Have you found anything that's worked really well to kind of start to break down those walls for that peer-to-peer interaction? I know I worked on campus for a long time, but I also was in college a long time ago. Um, how are students connecting these days? Are they doing it via social media? Are they meeting on campus? Is it in a dining hall? What are some things that you think, how are students connecting? And then how can us as campus administrators, help drive those connections as well?
And I mean, it's things that I'm noticing right now, throughout orientation week and having some new first year students on campus. Um, and the best way that that happens is by trying to create that environment. It's hard to have it organically happen over something like Instagram or Facebook or Reddit or Discord. Like students use all of these tools, I think, in the lead up to college. And then once you're here, you're all in the same area anyways. And it's sort of up to staff and administrators to create that collision that gets students who maybe wouldn't interact before to meet. So we're using things through our orientation website that also uses campus groups to like push things like speed friending and different events that really get people to meet other folks that they wouldn't otherwise interact with. We've got 7 or 8 different freshman dorm buildings that you're not going to meet someone from across campus organically, besides maybe in the dining hall. So we try and create again intentional settings where people can connect. And then also once the semester really starts, it's tough to, break out of the people that are just in your classes. But other things that we do that I notice is, again, looking on the slide here, we utilize the community feed function a lot on campus groups, whether it's just people posting about events that they're having, questions they have, people that are messaging folks on campus groups or on our different sort of platforms that we use. I find that to be really, really helpful because everyone automatically has an account and it's easy to find people. And if you go to an event and you remember, being checked in by you're having your attendance checked by someone who's on a certain e-board, oftentimes you'll get, a quiz or a form or something afterwards to follow up with you and see, what worked about an experience you had and, how to do any further involvement too. So it's definitely difficult, I think, for people that are coming in again new to the college setting and experience to connect with folks outside of just their classes, but creating those really intentional ways for that to happen, as well as if you do have someone connect, having that follow up, tracking who it is, and being able to, like, as a student leader or a staff leader, be able to, maybe set that up to happen again and again and continue that success that you might have had before is super, super important.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the connect, follow through, and then utilizing the platform so students can go and connect all in one place because that profile is already there. Kind of building off of that, Jacob in the chat, he's one of our client success managers here at Ready Education, but he said one of the campuses he works with adds all of their new students into a track and checklist, which guides them through different activities their first semester, and they see a lot of really good engagement with that. But then they can use that data and see what students weren't engaged for that first semester. And then that second semester, they run that report, they see who wasn't engaged, and then do targeted messaging to those students. Say, hey, we didn't see you really come out to anything last year. We would love to engage with you, and giving them kind of that second opportunity to get involved that spring semester. Awesome. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about student engagement. And one of the themes that we found in our data is that with student engagement specifically, is students are looking for that platform to bring together event information as well as their academic updates. Over 6 in 10 students said it would be extremely or very helpful for them to be more engaged. And then also 54% of our students find it extremely or very helpful to have this co-curricular transcript. And then they also have told us that they want to see where they've been involved and then help them showcase those skills to employers. And so within campus groups and Ready Campus, we have a co-curricular transcript where students can go and see everything they've been a part of. They're not having to remember what did they do first semester, what have they done, their junior year, but they can see it all in one place. And Elijah, we were talking about this a little bit before, but you said that you've used this to kind of help build out your resume. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I don't, obviously just like, export a co-curricular transcript and be like, to an employer or to an internship, the way that you would an academic transcript. But I think the best way that I've used this is it's really hard to keep track of stuff you do at college, like really, really hard, especially, I'm a senior, I'm a fourth year student. I can't, there are probably things that I did, my first year fall and spring that I don't even remember anymore, club meetings that I might have attended or things that I might have done. And it's really, really great to be able to have a comprehensive record of everything that I've done at my campus to help build out a resume or a CV, or if there's a relevant cover letter that you're writing when you're applying some of your extracurricular things, which I think are increasingly important to differentiate students. I feel like all students are doing well in classes pretty much, and it's like it's sort of the things that you do in your extracurricular setting that really help differentiate you. So has been a great tool for me, when I've made resumes or am applying to certain jobs and internships to show all right, well, which of my things that I've done throughout the last 3 or 4 years most apply to this? And how can I, if I need references or need to, jog my memory with certain other student leaders that were there, I can check, the group it was for, e-board members, all that stuff. It all sort of all is comprehensive and allows me to think back to my experience really, really well.
Thank you for sharing that. And you sounds like you had a really great internship this summer. Do you think any of the experiences you had, can you tell us a little bit about that internship? And then maybe if any of the experiences you had while you've been a student leader have impacted that choice to do that internship and what you knew and how the role you served in your internship?
Yeah, so I was interning for the Philharmonic Orchestra here in Rochester for the summer, doing community affairs and government relations and a bit of education work too. And I think that I really sort of was attracted to this opportunity off the bat because it was local. I had had experience going to the Philharmonic shows before and seeing sort of the impact they had on the community, literally by events that I had attended to, seeing them on campus groups. A lot of the RAs here they'll do residential life programs by taking students as like sort of field trips to certain orchestra shows, and that was something that sort of opened my eyes to, oh, this is a nonprofit, like a cultural institution that I really appreciate. And in my role there, I was able to apply a lot of the sort of student leadership skills that I've made, whether it's like member retention and management for our volunteers for the RPO, or whether it was for developing programs for our youth orchestra as well. Some of the things that I've done as student body president or working in our student union, or for my class council, the things that I've been able to build those skills, to create mentorship programs, or to organize rosters the best way, or to just really, really do things that help manage, large groups of young people. I think were really, really impactful. And I think most student leaders that use these sorts of tools and get good at using them can really apply that experience to a lot of their professional experiences too.
Thank you for sharing that as well. So moving on, I want to transition to some things that we've learned from our partner campuses. And the first is, making the most out of your events and how to keep that simple. I think sometimes there's, really complicated processes, and really taking a step back and saying, how can we make this as simple as possible to be the most impactful for our institution? So we encourage, we would say strongly encourage your student organizations, your clubs to use the same platform for events, because this is going to go back to what Elijah's been talking about, having that centralized space for one place for the students looking to get involved, to drive that engagement all in one area. So this adds this consistent experience for your students and allows them to know that like this is just where we go. Also explore opportunities to leverage this platform into university events. When I was working on campus, I worked with an engagement platform, and I would go to different departments and I would say, this resource is free for you. It's something that our student activities and our student affairs departments have been using, but we would love to have more university events in there and really starting to sell them that value. You can also, within campus groups, you can set up a template and workflow that student organizations can use to create events. Excuse me. This ensures that your team is receiving consistent information, the right people are getting that information and reviewing things, facilitates training for new student leaders, and then makes student jobs easier because it reduces that event process. They know what they need to do next. And so they're not just coming to one office where they say, this is the office that does events. But typically, there's a student life office and also maybe dining or campus events or campus rec that's all included. And you can start to say, these are the places you need to check in about your events. And then also help your students with these best practices. How do they get the word out about events? How can they leverage any digital technology? Is there digital signage? How can they get feedback after that event to inform future events? And then encourage student organizations to track their attendance. Not only is it really good for them, they are able to say, okay, we did an event on Tuesday night, and we had 5 people show up, but we did an event on Thursday night and 25 people showed up. They can start to internally say, maybe we do more events on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday because that's when more students are free. But it also allows you as that campus administrator to start to say, this is where we're going to start directing resources. These are the type of events that students are going to. And then you can report that up into a larger university system to say, these are the students that are engaged. This is how we're encouraging students to retain, and really having it all come down to that data. You're only as good as the data you have. And so students taking attendance for those events is going to be something that's really helpful as you move on. And so now I want to pass it back over to Elijah. He has some really good use cases of how to encourage activity and engagement on your campus, on his campus. And so he's going to share those with you now.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of the things that we do on campus, you got to incentivize people to get out of the dorm room. It can be really, really, challenging when it's either getting out of your dorm and, walking 10 minutes to the student union to be an event, or just, being with your roommate or something. But I think we try and do a great job of doing this through a lot of different factors. Talking about gamifying, engagement. Students don't see it like that, but they feel incentivized to go to something if you're going to get free food. Free food is the #1 way we get people to things ever. If you're providing pizza or subs, or you're providing ice creams as like ice cream social, there are so many ways to get people to feel more engaged and to go to a variety of different events if there's something in it for them, like free food or like giveaways. A lot of things we're doing through orientation right now is, students are coming here and they don't have a lot of campus swag or things that have, logos or sports branding on it. This is a great way to get people to go to events like speed friending, bingo, karaoke, ways to get people places because, what's in it for them. They're going to get to meet people, and they're going to get to get things like different, merchandise and different things that they wouldn't otherwise have. And especially for newer students, that's a huge thing as well. We also have a huge usage of like the leaderboard system on our campus, which I think is probably more prevalent for those that are, sophomores and above in their undergraduate experience, sort of tracking different events that you've been to, how many, organizations you're a member of, how many organizations you're an officer of, and just trying to figure out, who are the more engaged folks on campus, and that can sort of create that peer-to-peer competition that I think helps people, try and be more engaged and be a better student leader and get more involved on their campus. And then I also think, this below section that MK mentioned, sort of talking about student influencers and folks that are sort of representing both the school at large, but also maybe a segment of that school. A lot of our organizations that we have on our platform also have Instagram accounts or different things that attract students to go to events in the first place. And we've seen huge success in showing, take over like day in my life of a student leader in a medical volunteering group. And you'll get a bunch of, freshmen and sophomores who want to be like that and volunteer at a hospital and take these hard classes and TA this thing. And that sort of seeing your peers succeed and promoting that through the organization is a really, really great way of getting people to try and, again, like follow the leader and grow in the same ways and patterns that current upperclassmen and student leaders have done in the past. So we've done a lot of different things, but those are just a few that I think have really allowed us to incentivize people to get more involved, and also to follow some of the footsteps of really engaged peers and upperclassmen students.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. It's really seems like y'all are doing a lot of really cool things. So now I want to talk about, encouraging engagement. And so a question that we've asked our students is when we did this survey was, how do you find out about student organizations of interest? And as you'll see, 40% are saying it's from their friends. Very closely after that is social media, and then email, posters, campus app or website, announcements in class, activity fairs, and then, some students that maybe have not found an organizational home or something they're interested in yet, or they're not interested in that. But I think a lot of this goes back to that student's network. How are you connecting them with their peers? How are you connecting them with that co-curricular experience outside of the classroom? And so much of that is, friends, but also social media. And then, for the people that are participating, if you want to add in the chat, does this look representative of the students that you work with on a day-to-day basis? Do you think this is how they're learning about different student organizations? And then Elijah, I would love to hear from you if you think that this data accurately reflects what you see is happening on campus right now. And then maybe why or why not?
Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate. I think for the most part, word of mouth is always and has always been the best way of getting people to know things. And sort of like I said before, like the seeing, your peers and folks that are a year, 2 years, 3 years older than you who have been successful is by far the best way to, continue that sense of engagement and to get involved in things. I remember when I first started out being a student and seeing friends of mine or my RA when I was a freshman and being able to see all these great things that they've been doing, and ask, well, how do I do that? And then sort of getting involved off the sort of the offset of that. I think social media is probably also a huge factor, probably more so than 40% at my school. Like we have a very active Instagram presence and Facebook presence of almost all of our organizations, and I think through that we have people that even in the summer before you step foot on campus, you're getting information about events, about e-board officers, about people that you can get in contact with. And that's also really, really huge. And then, the next couple metrics, I think email is always huge. Everyone has email. Everyone gets emails. It's their choice to read it or like acknowledge it or comprehend it, obviously. And I think that's something that we struggle with sometimes is getting people to, read emails and, truly get that. But that's also the importance of having highly digestible information. And, posters, digital signage, flyers, that's age old. We have tunnels at Rochester because it gets pretty cold, and we have people paint tunnels with advertisements of things too. And it's really as many different areas that you can hit a student at, whether it's virtually, in person, on a sign, the more the merrier, I've found. And that's going to always up your engagement numbers and get people to find out about your organization, because sometimes someone doesn't check their email for a week and they're out of luck, and you don't want them to, not have found out about your organization or a certain really cool event that was happening.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And, stay on camera because, I want to, quickly go into this, how students are learning about events, such as speakers or other things going on campus. And it kind of switches, they're looking at emails and posters and then word of mouth. Do you think that this is representative of what you're seeing, or do you think it might be a little different? Because, we sampled, over 1,000 students, but this is about 18 months ago. And that's a lifetime for a lot of students. So are things changing, or do you think this is representative of what's happening at your institution?
I think that is because, looking at larger events, guest speakers, community weekends, big things, reunion weekends, like athletic games, all these things are primarily being programmed by, student affairs professionals and staff. So they're not going to be, so social media won't be as high of a factor. Word of mouth won't be as high as of a factor because the people whose, intention it is to market this are going to be using, I think, more, older forms of that. So again, like posters, emails, stuff like that. Um, I think it's probably the same here at Rochester when you have more intentional, marketing about or bigger events and things that, if you want to sort of, I don't know, break even, but, you can't have a huge guest speaker come to campus and only have 100 people show up. So I think they are more intentional about some of these tactics that probably get the most eyes on information. So emails, posters, things in the student union where people are walking around. So I think that's huge. But I think it's a little different from before when we were talking about organizations. Is the university itself as an institution is not going to be marketing stuff for the mock trial team or for the baking club, but they're going to be doing stuff for their own sanctioned events. So I think the more of the onus is on the student, which is why we're seeing things like social media and word of mouth and the more accessible things for students rather than, sending out big newsletters and email blasts because 19-year-olds aren't thinking to do that, for their events for their organization specifically.
Yeah, and then if you could give one piece of advice to student affairs professionals about, how we're marketing our events. I think one of the word I kind of latched onto is, you said they're using the more traditional methods of, emails, posters. If you could give one piece of advice, or if you said in ideal world, this is what you would do, what would you tell that student affairs administrator about marketing their events?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think honestly, like you don't have to abandon the older forms of doing things like email and posters. I mean, they work. Obviously, we see the data here, like people are finding out about it. But trying to get the numbers up where you're not just being hit by a couple of different factors, but you're using your social media wisely, you're using your academic partners wisely. I think oftentimes there's too much of a disconnect between university student life and overall student engagement and then the rest of the academic, units at the university. So if there's large things that you really want to get people going to, co-sponsor something with a large academic department with the dean's office, something that'll really allow for the academic and student life collaboration to happen, because I think that's how students who are, again, more academically focused and aren't going to be wanting to get engaged but more focused on their studies also find out about stuff. And I think, again, social media is huge. And I think student accounts too are great and can be used as a way to collaborate on content and work with people of the generation that are students to be able to, again, go peer to peer and not just have like a flyer, but maybe it's an Instagram reel or a video or some sort of collaborated post that really gets a lot more engagement and eyes on it than you would if you're just making one plain feed post.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that insight. I think it's really helpful for everyone to kind of just hear what, the students are looking for right now. And so now I want to shift and start talking about, student support and how we here at Ready Education, how we decide what to focus on, build out in our site. And, we've done our research. And what we've found is that 55% of the students we've talked to feel overwhelmed by the number of things they have to keep track of on a day-to-day basis. It's class, it's this event, it's your maybe a meeting or a mandatory hall meeting or a fun event going on campus. And then also 3 in 4 students miss at least one assignment or forget about exams at least once or twice a semester. And so what we've had and what we've been able to create is within our Ready Campus platform is that students can come and they can see their centralized calendar, which you're looking at here on the right-hand side of your screen. It's a full list of their academics, their classes, their due dates, their events, and even maybe some big campus, key events like, time to register or the university being closed. And then I think that's just a really great way because once, Elijah's been talking a lot about centralizing that communication, centralizing that place. And if you're able to put, hey, I have, an animation workshop at noon on the 8th, but I want to go to the spring chess tournament, I can do those things. But if there was an event that was happening at noon, I need to know that I have class. And then I'm not having to look at my academic calendar and then maybe a planner for my events. So something that we allow you to build out in your site. And then we also have, enhanced communication. We looked at these statistics of students saying, we're finding things from email, but ironically, students are saying they feel like they get too many emails. 50% say 1 in 2 say they feel like they receive too many emails, but 73% of those students would be more likely to read those emails if they were directly relevant to them. And so next, we're going to talk about how some of our member campuses and what they're doing to engage students. But what I do want to call out before we get to that is that within our platform, you are able to segment that communication. So you can say, we only need to send this information to first-year students. So every time they're getting an email, they are opening it and they say, this is relevant to me. That means they're probably getting less, but what they are getting, they're more likely to read. So now we're going to look at our first member campus, and this is Denison University that uses campus groups. And we wanted to showcase their example of this virtual bulletin board on their homepage as a way to make sure their platform looks up to date. They use this homepage as the single place where students can find what's going on around campus. And there's a live view of an old school bulletin board that everyone's tapped or take papers up into. It can bridge that academic and social experience and meet students where they are, which is online. It's, on their phone and that vertical display, they're able to come in and see what's going on. And I love the name of this platform because they call it What to Do, DU, because Denison University. It includes things like their campus event calendar, an athletic schedule, information on key upcoming dates, like maybe Discover Your Major Day, and much more, and then links out to other tools at the bottom. I also want to call out that I had a chance to meet this campus this summer, and they also talked about how they let other departments take over their site. So one of the things you'll notice kind of in this scrolling feed here is their campus satirical newspaper called The Bull Sheet. And they let them take over the homepage for a week. And they're like, we have taken over. And it was a really great way to engage their students. It got them logging on and really drove students to look because they wanted to see what this fun campus silly newspaper was doing, but also put all of those resources in front of them at the same time. The next example I want to talk about is our Columbia University, and they have weekly emails highlighting all students, and people begin to look forward to it. And through the use of tech, you can develop and plug and play templates to easily manage this communication. And they're sending this out right through our site. This really drove great buy-in with our platform. It goes out at the same day and the same time and includes all events and everything that's coming up. And then if it doesn't go out at the expected time, students are starting to email their office saying, hey, where is this? I need to know what's going on. And it also takes a while to build this level of adoption. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it is something that if you are consistent about it, students are going to learn to expect it. And they say, okay, I'm not going to get 12 emails. I'm going to get one email, and this is the one I'm going to read every week. And Elijah also alluded to this too at Rochester. They send something out on Thursday at 5, and if it does not go out at 5, they're starting to get emails saying, I would really love to know what's going on this weekend. So be consistent, and then that allows you to have everything in one place, going back to some of those key things. And this also begins to create a space where admins can see in real time who is being engaged. This can be done through attendance tracking. You can start answering those questions. What types of events are driving the most engagement? And what time of the week or day are they most popular? And all of this, starts with knowledge of those events. And then once students have knowledge of those events through newsletters or the homepage, you're able to see who's showing up and where you can start to put your resources. And so some opportunities for institutions. Provide more social activities and fun environments. These are all things that we ask students, what are some things you would like to see? So social activities, things that are fun. And they would, and then 20% said they would like to see some improved communication and transparency regarding, academic requirements and expectations. 18% of our students that we surveyed said that they wanted to feel more like they were part of the university community. And then at the same amount, they requested flexible scheduling options. So for courses and offices. So maybe that 8 to 5 that your office currently is open might not be working for a student that has a full-time job. And they said, we would love to be able to come in and have one day a week where we could do office hours in the evening. So how can you be flexible with your staff and with your staff's time so you're not, encouraging that burnout, saying you have to be here for a whole bunch of hours one day, but can you flex their time a little bit for a day or two so more students, as students that typically can't be engaged with your office, can come and meet with you. And so Elijah, I want to hear from you. What are some engagement opportunities that you have seen that have made you and your peers feel a part of the community at Rochester?
Yeah, so I'll hit on two things, and one sort of smaller is just like the variation in flexibility of events being offered. I think like by having a large amount of student organizations, it's some that are small, some that are large. We have a really, really academically oriented campus. I think 60 or 70% of our students are actively engaged in undergraduate research labs and take a lot of their time on their academic side of things. And it's nice to have, flexibility in how late our student union is open, when events are happening, and, when things are just generally planned from like a, administrative staff level. It's always sort of with the student availability and interest in mind first, which I really appreciate. And then another thing that I think we do a really good job of that I think helps our overall engagement and some of the opportunities that I think others, universities could follow is to understand that like students aren't a monolith, and it's really good to offer a different variety of types of events, during your sort of hallmark programs. So a lot of, schools will have reunion weekends and sort of community weekends that happen throughout the year, and larger things, guest speakers, alumni events, things that bring a lot of people to campus. And sometimes things don't work for certain people. Sometimes people aren't a comedy show person. They'd rather just go to, a group lecture, or they'd go to sort of a carnival setting, but they wouldn't want to go to, a silent disco or something. So there's a lot of different events that we host and a lot of different things that we do to try and be inclusive of different types of students. So any folks that might have an international background and something like this is new to them, we offer a lot of different, a broad arrays of things, but we also offer things for students that might have sensory issues, or so we have different lounges and quiet spaces. I think understanding that, you can have these huge sort of hallmark events as an institution, celebration dinners, all these things, but offering some modifications to those so everyone feels involved. You're going to have a significant, portion of your student body having some of these things that they want catered to them. And, as student affairs staff, modifying that in as many ways as possible to include folks really makes them feel part of the community. And you're gonna get those are sort of, I'm not gonna say like repeat customers, but folks that are, coming back time after time to go to these events, to engage with different organizations and to feel like a more ingrained member of your school community.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. So I want to kind of move in and talk about getting to a data-informed strategy. So if you need like why understanding why do things matter, why are these events important, how does it happen, and how can this help us get these results, how can we create processes that harness data that is useful to you. I think a lot of times when you're working in any area on campus, it's just collect the most data. But the third, the question after that is, what do you do with all this data? What do you really need to know, and how do you need to get that information? And within our system, you can have, data-driven communication with insights on open rates, click-throughs, delivery success, really seeing what emails are students reading, what are they not reading, how can we engage with them more? You can also have event management with attendance tracking and post-event feedback options that are automatically sent, or a centralized data collection for forms and surveys, all easily organized, managed, and shareable with those results. You can also use our site to create optimized workflows to streamline administrative tasks and boost different efficiencies. And then clear engagement tracking for users and effortless reporting for administrators. For this number 5, this goes back to what Jacob put in the chat at the beginning, being able to say, here is this exact track of what you need to do to be successful. Here's how you engage on campus for your students to be successful. Here are some ways that you can build that community. And then we would encourage you to survey your users or your students, going back on a kind of annual basis, a regular basis. Start considering asking students, what are they looking for? What are the main reasons that they are using your student engagement solution? Is this information easy to find? What would they like to see? And then by asking for this feedback, you're setting this expectation that you're saying, hey, we're expecting you to be there, but they are then also turning and expecting you to listen to that as well. So really using that full survey loop of saying, we see the information, we've analyzed it, and then how are you going to make that change? And then share this feedback with students or highlight different changes made due to their specific feedback. So I also want to talk about, assessing this engagement. We have a really great campus partner here with University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and their numbers are stellar. They're able to go in and use our data dashboards and seeing all of this information in one place. They can show progress compared to previous years, while also highlighting how much they do to engage students in the successes they're already having. And while not all schools may have this level of engagement, having the data allows you to make data-informed decisions on where to allocate your time and your resources, and also see what gaps you might have in programming and processes for that data collected. This helps take some of that hard work in finding and collecting that data so that things are seen by the right people on really beautiful dashboards that are just right within the site. Another great example is right here with USC Man. They have co-curriculum as an accreditation requirement. In here, students are able to go in and map out activities with their data, journeying from what to so what and now what. They use our tools to automate event feedback and then track that attendance, and then evaluate the data to make real-time processes and program changes to increase the student engagement and co-curriculum and overall student satisfaction. Access to this level of data is going to allow you to identify those insights and trends that you can act on to better and support engaged students, and then report it to leadership to create a seamless access to different resources and experiences for your students. And then we also want to talk about, we talked very briefly at the beginning about burnout. You're consistently being asked to do maybe more with less, and really figuring out how can we continue to do those things, but make sure that it is appropriate for our time and appropriate for our office. And so we would encourage you, and we've done this with, admins every day. We've talked to them, and these are some questions we frequently ask them. What processes do you need to streamline? Is there anything on campus where maybe the process right now feels a little clunky? Can that be brought together under one roof? Who are those stakeholders? Who are your end users? Who are the people that need to be in the room? Who are those decision makers? Who's able to say, absolutely, here's the green light? And then what are things that may be indirectly impacted if you do start to change or streamline some of your processes? Also, maybe who could veto this decision? How do you get in front of them before you start making big changes or figuring out or laying out your year to say, this is what we're planning on doing. Here's kind of the overarching thing. And they can say, go. So, you don't get down to the last, 10 seconds. And they say, actually, you know what? So sorry, but I don't think this is going to work out. And then what else is missing? Who needs to be in the room? What do you need to know? And then how can you use our platform to go and get that data? And then one thing we've seen that's really common is finding efficiencies with our workflow process. And what's very common with this is our events. This allows our users to optimize, automate, and streamline administrative workflows and approval processes. It's pulling in professionals in different functional areas that come together to revamp this experience. So what you can see here is that it's pulling in catering, IT, public safety, conference and event services. It's all in one approval process. They can see all the information. They can comment back and forth, and they're no longer having to work in a silo. And then tough conversations can start to be broken down with campus partners by breaking down processes and finding that path forward to use technology to facilitate this process, with the ultimate goal of providing students a seamless experience and as well as protecting your time and your energy so you can get back to being with your students and not having to do a whole bunch of paperwork at the end of the day. And really to reiterate, having technology at the forefront. What you're seeing here has been some of the tools that Ready Education can provide to you, but it's also important that you evaluate and select solutions that meet your campus's needs. Think through our admin road mapping questions. Think about how how our students responded to our surveys about your challenges, and what your key needs are, and how can that technology help address those, and then drive processes and provide improvements to increase your student success. There's lots of different things that we can do, like providing this enhanced convenience for your students with everything all in one place, optimizing your efficiency, defining student success with co-curricular transcripts, service hours, tracks and checklists, that gamification. Really nurturing a strong sense of community with our feeds, our directory, our group chats, so students can all come in one place and connect right there. We also have a whole host of event management and registration tools, as well as ways to gain valuable insights and identify actionable student engagement gaps, all within one tool. So now I'm going to turn it back over to you. We have about 6 minutes left. I'm going to turn it back over to our participants. Do you have any questions? We have really enjoyed spending this time together, but we would love to hear from you. If you have questions for me or Elijah or some other Ready Education people on the call, feel free to throw those in the chat and we will get to those.
Awesome. Thanks so much, MK and Elijah. And as MK said, I'm happy to take any questions that the group has. One question that I've seen come in, and I think we sort of touched on this already in a number of ways, but there was so much good information and advice shared. If you had to pick one piece of advice that you would share with the audience, especially around communicating with students, what might it be? So MK, maybe I have you start to give Elijah a little bit more time to think about this, but just from your experience on campus, what's one thing that as individuals are thinking about communicating with students, you would recommend they keep in mind?
Absolutely. My biggest piece of advice would be to really figure out when you're going to communicate with those students and what do they need to know right now. I think on campus we get stuck a lot of times in this idea of we have to give all the students all the information right at the beginning of the semester, and then by the time it's October and they are supposed to do something, they might have forgotten. So how can you do segmented communication to give them the actionable things they need to do during that time? And then how can you make sure that's getting in front of the right people, but not overloading the students that don't need that information, so they continue to check their email, they continue to get excited about the information that's being provided to them because they know that you have made a committed effort to just really put in the information in front of them that they need.
Awesome. Elijah, any thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, I think Amir's got a great answer. And something that I would have said, another thing that I would probably mention is sort of the function that we use, workflows and like checklists for on campus groups. I think in certain organizations or different programs that you're in, like we have like a multi-semester leadership program that I think 600 or 700 students are enrolled in. It's a huge daunting list of things that you have to do. And much like a lot of communication or information about an involvement you have, it's like really bad to get all that information at once, but breaking things down chronologically, breaking them down into just sort of different, more digestible sections, sort of like MK was talking about with like emails and communication, breaking down the requirements of college. Often they're for 4 years of college. You don't want to have someone be super worried that they're not going to get through a certain organization or sort of a co-curricular program, but showing that it is digestible, it happens in incremental steps, and that you have time to complete it is really, really huge for keeping someone retained into a program and not having them drop it because they're overwhelmed with something.
That's a really important point, Elijah. And I don't think we shared this statistic from the survey results. I know we talked about the one with 55% feel overwhelmed, but there was another statistic in the results that was around the biggest challenges students face or face the past 12 months. And one of those was just uncertainty about academic expectations. I think that's similar for some of these co-curricular expectations that you were just talking about, Elijah. So any way to show them that there's a process, right? This is a step process. They don't have to do it all at once, both academically and in their co-curricular life is going to be helpful. One other last question that I saw just pop in, and I can answer this one. This was about when the survey was conducted and how. So we conducted the survey last September, working with a national survey platform. So we had a panel of respondents, and I think MK pointed this out, but we had over 1,000 students who were enrolled in a higher education institution, either a 2 or 4 year institution, to respond to the survey. So that's how we pulled the survey data together. And again, it was a national sample of students. All right. I think that brings us to the end of the hour. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to MK and Elijah for sharing their insights and perspectives. We very much appreciate it. And I wish you a great rest of the day. Take care, everybody.